Today, I want to share something pretty personal, the story of how I decided to move to the United States. This wasn't a snap decision. It was years in the making, shaped by conversations, experiences, and kind of a lot of soul searching. So let's get into it. For as long as I can remember, my career has been central to who I am. I'm not saying it's the only thing that matters in my life, but it's always been a huge driver for me. And tied to that was a deep need for independence and freedom, not just in my career, but in how I make decisions about my life in general. I've also never been someone who wanted to follow a predetermined path. I always want a bunch of different options for myself. I wanted to be able to choose my own direction. And that mindset became the lens through which I evaluated every major decision I've made. I distinctly remember sitting down with my dad one evening and having a conversation about my future. We were talking about potentially getting my MBA, and I brought up this idea of what if I used it as a pathway to move to the United States. Now, like any dad, he didn't want me to leave where he was, but he wanted me to do what's best for my career. And we had this conversation, and he was insistent upon the fact that I was being too ambitious for saying I could make six figures very soon into my career, and I could probably leverage it to move to the United States. He said that I had a degree in kinesiology and political science, and my degree did not match what I did, business operations. He said it would be really hard for me to move down to the States, and it felt as though he kind of didn't believe in my path. Lo and behold, I know he did, and he was just looking out for me, since I know you watch these videos, Dad. But it made me think, and it really lit a fire in me to decide to move to the United States and really put effort into focusing on my career and trying to be the best business operator that I could become. So we talked about the MBA, and getting the MBA felt like a very strategic move. It was a way to position myself for opportunities that may not have been available otherwise. Well, my dad listened, and I could tell he was processing what this would mean. Like I said, it planted a seed for me. I decided that I wanted to make it to the US with or without an MBA, and I really didn't want to get an MBA. So I didn't. But even before that conversation, I'd been thinking about the American market. I wanted to work for American companies, make money in the US, and I wanted to understand how the American economy worked from the inside, not just reading about it in a different country and watching it on the news. I was really excited about the scale and pace of things in the United States, and I wanted to be a part of that. Opportunities felt bigger, and it felt like a place that matched my ambition. And I knew that if I wanted to really push myself professionally, I needed to be in the United States. I ultimately decided that I really didn't want to do an MBA, so I started looking for ways that I didn't have to get an MBA and I could still move to the United States. So I started exclusively looking for jobs with American companies. And thankfully, I landed the job that I'm still at, working for an American company. And honestly, this experience has changed everything. This job has really shown me the opportunity that exists, the way things move, the way people think about growth, and the resources available. It's different than Canada, it's a lot faster, and it's a lot more ambitious. Working at this job has given me a front row seat to what's possible, and I realized that I didn't just want to work for an American company, I wanted to be in America, building and being surrounded by the energy that I just talked about every single day. Now, like a lot of people from Toronto, I assumed I would end up in New York City. It's kind of the default. Toronto to New York feels like a natural progression. Same time zone, close to home, similar vibes, big financial center with a very diverse city. It made sense on paper for me to pick New York City, but then something unexpected happened. I started spending time in San Francisco. And to be super honest with you, it was because of a guy who I'm still with to date. But the more time I spent in San Francisco, the more I realized how much I enjoyed it. The culture, the people, and the way everyone was building something. It resonated with me in a way that New York never did. I felt like I fit into this ecosystem. People were optimistic, forward thinking, and there was a sense that anything was possible if you were willing to work for it. It wasn't about where you came from or what your background was. It was solely about what you're building and where you're going. And San Francisco felt just right for me. So once I had that clarity, everything shifted. I went from maybe I'll move to the US someday to I'm doing this and I'm going to do it soon. And I'm going to figure out a way to do it now. And I started having more serious conversations with my parents and my friends about it. These conversations of I'm going to move to the US weren't hypothetical anymore. These were real discussions about logistics, visas, timing, and what it would mean for my relationships, career, and everything else. And the more I talked about it, the more I was convinced that it was the right move for myself. I was still hesitant. I was 23 years old and I didn't think I qualified for any visas. I didn't have an MBA and I didn't know where I was going. And I was also really afraid to leave Toronto. But what really sealed it for me was reframing how I thought about the decision. And I credit my mom for this. I stopped thinking about it as I'm leaving Toronto forever and started thinking about it as I'm going to spend some time away from Toronto, just like I went away to university. And that shift was huge. It took the pressure off. It made the decision feel less permanent, less scary, and that I could always come back. Toronto wasn't going anywhere, and it hasn't. My friends and family are still there, but right now it was my time to go explore, push myself, and see what I was capable of in a different environment. And once I settled into into that idea, it became a lot easier for me to think about moving and make the decision and really go for it. So that's the story of how I chose to move. It wasn't one moment or one conversation. It was a series of realizations, experiences, and decisions that built on each other over time. And now here I am. And if you're thinking of a big move like this, my advice is pretty simple. Trust your instincts, have hard conversations, and remember that nothing is permanent. You can always change your mind. You can always go back home, but you'll never know what's possible if you don't just give it a try. And if you're interested in learning about my next steps of how I chose my visa, I also have a video for that. You can watch it right here. Thanks for watching.